All right, we're recording.
Thank you, Julian. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is the Hartford Subcommittee of the MARB. It is May 27th, and we do have a quorum, and the time is 10:04. Good morning, everyone. Today, I am Kimberly Kennison. I am the designee for Secretary McCaw. The Secretary has been pulled for legislative session. There's a possibility that she might be able to join us, but that is uncertain at this moment. And the designee for the treasurer, Christine Shaw, is not available. So the first item on the agenda, since we have a quorum, is to approve the minutes of April the 22nd. And if I could get a motion, please.
So moved, Bob White.
Thank you, Bob.
Second, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? I don't hear any discussion. Can we get a roll call vote, please, Julian?
Mr. Felsigno,
Yes. Yay. No. Yes. Sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. White,
They
Yeah.
both work.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Kennison.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
That's all of the members. The minutes have been approved. Thank you. And so the next item on the discussion on the agenda today is to discuss some possible action on a labor contract. It is the Hartford Police Union. And currently the police union contract has a term that expires on June 30th of 2022. So it's a 1-year extension. The contract covers 435 members, and the city has experienced a high rate of attrition for several years and recruitment challenges that have resulted in some high vacancies. The city has negotiated a tentative agreement with the union that would elevate the salary schedules for police officers to be more competitive with other police departments in the region. The city has calculated the cost of increasing the salary schedule for the police officers at approximately $2.56 million in fiscal year 2022, which is the final year of the current contract. The FY22 costs are incorporated in the FY22 budget that was already adopted and is reflected in the city's 5-year plan. The city has provided us some comparisons of the current and proposed salary schedules of other departments in the region and other departments in the state. Also provided is an attrition data and resignations over the past 5 years for the city. So based on the MARB statute, the MARB has until July 1st to take action on this tentative agreement if we choose to do so. So now I will look to the city to give us some update on this contract proposal.
Good morning, Ms. Kennison and members of the MARB. Thank you for having us today. Your summary covered most of what was on my notes here for today, but just really wanted to reiterate that the cost to train, recruit, and equip our officers is about $88,000. So the turnover rate that we have and the continuing to hire new officers is very costly. So our hope is that increasing our recruit rates and also increasing the max pay for our officers will allow us to recruit and retain the officers, in a more economically and fiscally responsible way. As you said, the proposed cost is about $2.56 million. In 2022, we're offsetting that with some assumed attrition of about 21 full-year vacant positions, since we don't think that we'll be able to recruit and retain enough officers to fill the current vacant positions and the attrition that will likely happen throughout the year. So that is baked into our 2022 proposal, but it does not continue on. So we have these 21 officers that we're assuming we will not replace in 2022, but that is not assumed in 23 and the out years in the forecast. So I wanted to be sure to point that out. Looking at my notes, this agreement was referred to the OMBGA committee at council on Monday night for review and approval. And the agreement will be voted on by the HPU this evening. And I believe at a high level, that is, so to talk about the cost and what this entails. So we're increasing our recruit salaries from about $54,000 as our base to $61,000. And that takes us to be about, about the second highest recruit level in our region. And then it increases our max base pay from about $73,000 to about $81,500, which allows us to be also not the lowest anymore in our region, in our area. And we're doing this by increasing all of our officers up 2 steps. So that's really what this proposal did. It took, if you were at step 3, now all of a sudden you're at step 5, and then moving forward. And we've made it effective July 1st. So those are my updates. I also have Chief Thody on the line if there's any questions for him as well.
A question, Bob White. I noticed thank you for the data on attrition. I noticed that the number of resignations by minority officers is disproportionately high. Where are they going? Or are they leaving policing as opposed to going to another municipality?
Understood. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Mr. White. Chief, can you respond to that?
I can. Good morning, I guess, everybody, and thanks for having me here.
Good morning, Chief.
In conversations, I think there's a problem going on here where this is law enforcement and city government is now almost looking to be like Google or Amazon. There's becoming a competitive nature in almost poaching talent. We are a target-rich environment for that. We run our own academy. It's one of the best academies in the state. Other towns send their officers here. They get very good training. It's training in diversity. We run very diverse classes, and we produce a good police product. And then up to this point, hopefully, we just weren't paying them in a competitive way. So they were seeking to go elsewhere. So, for example, East Hartford has taken 5 of our officers recently. I called the chief and I said, what are you doing? If you hire new officers and you recruit your own officers, I'm glad to put them in my academy and train them for you. But, you're taking an officer that I have a full-time recruitment division because we are trying to diversify the department to reflect the city per our Cintron settlement agreement and for many reasons. And then they run through an academy, and then they run through field training, and then they get a year or 2 of solid training under their belt here. And what they come out as an experienced officer. We tend to weed out the ones that are not good along that process. So when they make it far enough along to have been here long enough to be applying to other departments, they tend to be very, very good, very well-trained officers. And so that makes these other departments really want to take them. So what I found in talking to these chiefs is that it's, 10 officers may apply for, let's say, East Hartford. And it was more than that. I think it was as many as 15 that applied to go over there. They go down that list and they basically select racial and ethnic minorities and females to fill their ranks. If you notice, if you Google East Hartford and the Hartford Current article recently about them, it's an attaboy article about what a great job they've done in increasing diversity in their police department, and at least 5 of those officers, and largely on our back, it has been because they're taking those officers from us. So what it is that these other departments are also looking to diversify. That is a goal of policing across the country, not just urban police departments, but suburban police departments and rural police departments also want to diversify. And so they look at all the applicants and, they say, oh, this is a great opportunity to hire, a minority or female and to bolster the ranks. So that's the reason for the disproportionate number of resignations. Yes, they are going to law enforcement in other towns. They're seeking, better pay and the like in other places.
Chief, a quick follow-up. Thank you very much. Quick follow-up question. I appreciate the challenge and I applaud your goal. With respect to new recruits, I know the city has been, as you said, trying to diversify its ranks so that it more reflects the community. Are there special challenges for the department to recruit from, the Hartford community, new people?
Yes, I think, we've always really pushed to recruit Hartford residents. And, a lot of that is in our recruiting officers that go out into the community, our community partners that help us really, sell the job and go out and get more folks in. But we had an analysis done by the Department of Justice a few years back, and we found blocks in, the education level of some of the applicants that come from the city, the criminal histories of some of the folks that come from the city, the nutrition and the ability to pass the physical agility. So we don't get as many city residents as we'd like. What we did a few years back when I was in charge of planning and accreditation is, we tried to create a pipeline into the department. And that was by bolstering the PAL program, bolstering the Police Explorer program, bolstering the cadet program. So really now we can grab a hold of a kid, that's as young as, 10 years old or so, get him into the PAL program, get him into athletics, and then get him into the Explorer program when they turn 14. Run them through the Explorer program all the way up until they're 18, and then they help them apply for and get hired as a cadet. And then, they're a cadet here. And then they roll right into the academy. So that pipeline has worked pretty well. But I'll be honest, even some of those folks that are city residents, lifelong city residents, and that have at that point been associated with the department for as many as as 8 to 10 years, because the cadets can apply all the way up to they're 25 years old. Some of them have left too. We lost a Latino male cadet to East Hartford for purposes of pay. It's only a short drive. Ironically enough, still lives in our city. But we've tried to overcome those challenges with getting a hold of folks early. We also, the recruitment division runs nutrition drives, nutrition education sessions. They run PT, physical agility sessions throughout the year, that people that are interested in getting involved in policing can come and we get them into shape and get them ready for the academy. We have seen successes from that. We also do financial literacy. We've run into some issues with credit and bankruptcy. So we've partnered with some local financial institution to do financial literacy. We do a lot, and I have a full-time recruitment division of a lieutenant, a sergeant, and an officer, which is something that not a lot of police departments have. It's been successful, but it's just very frustrating to fund that kind of endeavor and then have our own academy and then get these individuals through a very difficult process and an arduous process and get them out the other end in a successful way, only to see them wearing another uniform within 2 to 4 years. We're talking about legislation to extend that transfer statute from 2 years to maybe 4 years or 5 years, where another community would have to reimburse us for that training. But that has to go through the legislative process.
Great. One final question, and I'm definitely in favor of the contract. Given the last year and the criticism of the police, which is as you're saying, is being met with attempts to recruit from the community to make the officers reflect the community, is the kind of national discussion, is that deterring young people from joining the force?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question, and this is an opinion statement. I don't think there's really any science to back this up, but I imagine in the next 2 to 4 years or 5 years, there will be folks that research this and do put science behind it. I don't think this is a time that anyone's running out looking to be a police officer. We're seeing lower numbers of applications, not just here, but in other places that actually pay well, right? So that's predominantly some of the reasons, as I call these chiefs, and I've called these chiefs and I said, I'm not going to give you their backgrounds. I'm going to make you FOI them. I'm going to do whatever I can to stymie this process of poaching talent. because I think it's a shame. If this were, like I said, if we were a private sector company, these other PDs, I believe their intent would be to put us out of business, and we're a police department, and that shouldn't be the intent. So I've been very vocal and probably unpopularly vocal about my displeasure with this method of recruiting. But the answer that I get from these chiefs are, no one's applying to be a new cop. We're not getting we used to get, let's say a small town. A lot of the towns around here are retired Hartford officers, including the ones from East Hartford. And to his credit, after I got off the phone with Chief Sansom, he agreed to stop taking our laterals so that we could breathe for a little bit. We went from 430 something officers down to almost under 400. As you see the numbers, we've lost 37 to resignations this fiscal year alone. But like Bloomfield, Paul Hammock having trouble recruiting. To his credit, he went out and did hire 2 new officers. And to my word, I put those 2 new officers in our class that started this Monday. But I think the problem is that this is not an attractive career right now for a lot of people, and especially folks that live in urban environments where this police community separation tends to go wider because of national events. We continue to work at community policing here, but just recently I had to move 12 of my walk beat officers, which people love seeing the walk beat officers out there on their bicycles and walking around. I had to put them back in patrol because I just don't have enough cops to fill the cars. So I think it's a problem. I do think it'll fix itself over time as we build back the trust. We're just a couple days beyond a year out from George Floyd, which was one of the biggest polarizing events when it comes to police community relations that I've ever seen. And it also eroded trust more than anything else I've ever seen. So we've been working nonstop to try to build that trust back, and hopefully, if it's economically attractive and we can continue to sell it as the noble profession that it truly is, and we continue to highlight the positive aspects of this job, hopefully those numbers will go back up again. But my last academy class, I had authorized for 34 seats. I had 14 filled, and we took everybody that passed.
Wow.
So that should be a telling number.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Chief. That was very informative for us. And Mr. White. Question on the comparatives that were included in the package. When I look at those numbers that are currently here, Hartford, of course, is the lowest of all of the comparisons. Jen, did you do the comparisons, or did the chief who completed this?
The chief and I worked on it together.
Okay. So is the numbers that you have before the contract update?
Yes.
Okay. So at this moment, without a change, Hartford is clearly in the worst case scenario compared to anybody else, any of the other towns.
Correct.
Yeah, and it actually was glowing to me. So I was actually sad to see that. Now, if we look at the max number that's across, your new proposed number for entering is the 61?
Yes.
Is where you're looking to go to?
Correct.
With the max of 81?
Yes.
Okay. It makes progress, but you're still going to be, the max will be fixed. No, they're both still going to be below the region, so it's still more work to be done. And I know this is a big price tag to fix this alone. Yeah. Okay. Also, Bob, I wanted you to bring to your attention that there was a slide in here that says reasons for resignation, and it's color coded in the packet, and it really was going to other departments, as the chief alluded.
No, I saw that.
Okay.
That's what prompted
Okay.
the question about why.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the other members?
Yeah, this is Mark. I'm in support of the contract. Very disturbing to see the people leaving, which the chief has articulated some of the reasons. Is it possible, and I understand to go into other departments, And I'm a believer that the money is not quote unquote everything, even though Hartford should be commensurate with other towns because they have the availability through private jobs and overtime to make more annual salary, even though it's not listed in the salary grid. But that being said, is it possible for the chief to, or somebody to develop an exit interview process and or an exit questionnaire to determine if it is in fact money or other conditions of employment that they are for the reason that they're leaving? Because when I was in the business of another union, you'd be surprised how many were leaving not for the salary but for other reasons. So I'm just asking if they have done that to that depth, and if not, can they, even with the 34, to try to say, is it money? And if it's money, obviously you're making a valid attempt to address that issue, but it may be other issues that people are unaware of that are causing them to look in other places. So that's just my comment. I would hope that they would be able to do a deeper dive, even though I think the money definitely is a condition. I just don't know if it's the only condition. Could be other issues. And that's it.
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. So not only have we done that, but we didn't just I didn't just decide to ask the city for a significant amount of money, knowing the financial situation the city's in. I've been here for 25 years. I'm well aware of that. We have the cultural analysis that was completed last year. It is on our website if you'd like to take a look at it, or maybe somebody can, I can email it to somebody and they can take a look at it. That was a 1-year analysis by researchers to look at the cultural climate of the department. We were interested in that for a number of reasons. But what we did find was that the pay was a significant issue. So that was ground zero. Another recommendation of the cultural analysis was to have a working group where we had more intimate conversations about work environment and work satisfaction. We had that working group. The sergeant that was in charge of that working group put out a memo, probably a 7 or 8 or 9 page memo. In there again, pay was identified. We do exit interviews. Part of our recruitment and retention team's job is to do them. They're when they leave, they're welcome to have an audience with me as an exit interview. But we actually, before they leave, we grab a hold of them and find out why they're leaving. Predominantly, I mean, vast majority, I think it's 80% of them pay was what was cited. That's not to say, as you mentioned, that there's not other issues. This is a department where you can work as much as you want between private duty, as you alluded to, and overtime, as our numbers have not been at full staffing now for going on probably 7 or 8 years. But we are seeing a generation, and this is not to slight anyone, but the millennial generation and the younger generation that we are seeing now wants to work 8 hours a week, if that, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and then go home. This is not a generation that is interested in working that overtime. So that creates what I believe is the second most difficult hurdle for us as an agency is order-ins and holdovers. This is a generation, the younger officers that wants to do their 40 hours and that's it. They want, time with their family, time with their friends, time away from work is important to them, way more so than my generation. I worked as much as I could. And what we're seeing there is now we're basically saying, okay, but if I can't fill these shifts, I've got to put the minimum number of cars out there. So we're ordering in at triple and quadruple the rates that we had in years past. And that is creating job dissatisfaction. And that is where some of these younger officers are saying, for this low pay and the fact that I have to keep getting ordered in. And when I do get ordered in, my rate at time and a half sometimes isn't even as much as some of these other officers are making at straight time. And that's what pushes them to another department. The sad story there is that they get ordered in in those small departments probably more often than they do here. So we've also implemented some changes in our ordering policy that, that is going to take really this weekend effect. We know we have a very busy weekend. So what we've done is we've taken the people that are actively working and we've held them for 4 hours. And then we brought the next shift in 4 hours early. So we impacted the lives of the officers that would have been here that day anyway by 4 hours instead of taking somebody that was scheduled for a day off and ordering them in for 8 hours. And that's just one of many, programs that we have to try to make work-life balance, somewhat manageable here at HPD. But we did a deep dive in 3 different ways: exit interviews, our group that we had that met here, and then a cultural analysis, which it clearly lays it out, like I said. So this was a very educated, information and evidence-based decision to address the pay first.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well-
Any other questions?
This is Steve Falsigno. Good morning.
Yes, Steve. Good morning.
So for full disclosure, I've been a police commissioner in Woodbridge for 21 years, Chief. And what we've also found is that what we're doing is we're trying to hire already accredited police officers to replace the retirement. So we've had a fair amount of them also. The only thing I can add is that I think it does have a lot to do with pay, because you have to inspire someone to stay. What we're finding is that people are, because of the change in some of the rules that have been voted on at the State House, some of the police officers that we're finding are leaving after 20 or 22 years, getting their pension, and then coming to a smaller town for not a lot less money compared to the risks that they're taking in some of the bigger cities. And that's what we're finding. My question is, do you agree with that statement?
So that if you look at the people that have left here, the folks that do their 20 years and they retire, I have absolutely no qualms about that. You do 20 years in Hartford, I mean, those are literally dog years, compared to some other places. And those officers have paid their dues. They've vested their retirements. They've worked their requisite number of years, and I, happily give them recommendation letters and whatever they need to move on. The difference is, if you look at just the difference between this year, so far this year and last year, I'll compare it to 18-19. For fiscal year 18-19, we had 19 retirements and 9 resignations. This year, we've had 37 resignations and 2 retirements. So we're not seeing the retiree leave and go to a place like Woodbridge or somewhere, and God bless them. They deserve to continue to work. I'm glad that they want to, and they work out to be great cops in some of these smaller communities. I think Granby is almost 100% like retired Hartford police officers. What we're seeing is if you look at some of the numbers, is people with less than 5 years. Out of those 37, only 2 were able to retire. I'm sorry, out of 39, only 2 were able to retire. 37 were resigning early, and the majority of those were under 5 years on the job. But I do agree, some people don't want to work in the city because they're afraid of the liability, police accountability bill, and the like. The big difference here, and to a point that was made earlier, I don't think that we will ever be paid the same as Rocky Hill. Rocky Hill is like the unicorn in policing in the greater Hartford area. I had a detective leave here with 14 years on the job and got a raise as a brand new police officer in Rocky Hill. That's how high they're. I think they start at like $98,000. They have incentive programs for officers to go over there as a lateral transfer. But in Rocky Hill, you will be a police officer for likely 20 years. You will never get to do a walk beat. You will never get to be a community service officer. They probably have 1 or 2 detectives over there, and they've probably been there for 30 or 40 years. You'll never see an opportunity for detective, for street crimes unit, for narcotics, for the tactical team, the Marine division. So that one thing that city brings that bridges that gap in money sometimes is opportunity to do different things. And that is a place where we're really trying to market ourselves with the millennials, because the younger generation wants to do like a week or two in patrol, and then they want to be in CSI, or they want to be in the SVU, like the stuff that they see on TV. They want to be investigators. That's great to have for ambition, but it's not reality. You have to learn, you have to crawl before you can run, and you have to, crawl before you can walk. So we're having, I've probably, we've brought in more training than we ever have before to try to keep people motivated, to try to keep people engaged and entertained. I've added things like, the homeless outreach officers, we added a specialty officer for illegal dumping, solving some of these quality of life issues while giving someone something new, a new challenge to do. I put specific officers to respond to car accidents, because that can be a science in of itself. So we're trying to keep people literally engaged to stay as well. But I think the retirees is a totally different thing. I wish them the best in their retirement. They deserve it.
Yeah, we're having that issue in Woodbridge because we only have 28 positions, so we have people that get on the force and they stay there, and there's no place to move up. But Chief, over your right shoulder, is that Jason Johnby behind you in that picture?
No, that's Teixeira, but
No,
close.
yeah, close, right? I can't.
That's a walk off from.
Okay, I'm a Yankee fan, but unrelated to what we're talking about. So sorry to.
Good
I
catch.
was curious. Thanks.
Any other questions from the members?
Yeah, I thought the chief was doing well until I realized what pictures he had in his office.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Chief, I would have given you a hard time if it was a Red Sox, but
I'm chairing today, and I would not give him a hard time.
This is what my life. This is what my life looks like. That's my wife. So I'm used.
Well,
all right.
that's my household, exactly the same.
She's a unicorn. She's a unicorn too. She's a Red Sox and Giants fan.
What the real question is what are the shirts that the children wear?
All my kids have 4 legs, so they don't wear shirts. I'm lucky there.
There you go.
Oh, fun.
All right. Any other discussion regarding this contract?
Kim, can I ask a quick
Yes.
question?
Please.
Chief, do you have an average or approximation of the elapsed time between the point at which a recruit is hired and has completed the academy and then field training and then ultimately, counts towards a minimum staffing on a shift?
Yep.
Yeah, so our academy runs just about 6 months, give or take. And then we have, the field training runs an additional 4 months. So you're talking about 10 months before they come off of field training. Once they come off of field training, they're considered on their own, and they then count towards minimum staffing. They do have to do a year probation from the time that they graduate the academy. So, I mean, you could call it a year and a half until they're completely kind of free and clear. But when I consider them for my staffing is when I consider them to be on their own. And they begin to do that about 4 months after graduation of the academy, which is a 6-month academy. Some are held for remedial for a week, 2 weeks, some 3 weeks, so it's kind of staggered when they come out into the real world, but predominant, but average, it's 10 months.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, one question, and maybe this isn't for now, but for later, because we've been hearing the issue of the difficulty the city has had in recruiting qualified officers, and I think it's, I agree with you that it's pretty important, and I think the way to deal with lack of trust in institutions is some of the things you're doing. But what kinds of things have been done in other urban areas outside of Connecticut? And in particular, is there any thought about changing the compensation model, which is maybe to take for new hires to take money that normally would have gone into pensions and front load it into compensation. Again, this is a loaded question, and I'm just wondering if it's being discussed. Perhaps we can talk about it later, but I don't want to take up your time.
I think it's unique that you waited to ask me the loaded question until after you found out I was a Yankee fan. But no, so listen, we talk a lot from, I've had the benefit of going to PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, for 3-week training, and I've made friends with 80 other law enforcement executives from across the country. For example, financial literacy, the financial literacy program that we have going on right now, we straight stole that from Chicago, because I went to one of the executive level trainings that I went to was with a superintendent from Chicago, and we got to talking, and she gave me this, was talking about this financial literacy because they are having financial issues, bankruptcy and things like that were eliminating some of their candidates. It was great. I brought the entire model back here. I put my recruitment person in touch with them in Chicago, and we mirrored that here. So we talk to one another. A lot of these ideas, I like to, try to sound smart, but most of these things are things that we get from talking to other places. So yes, we do that. I've never explored the front loading of the compensation with the pension. I think as we get into contract negotiations for the full contract, there's a lot of things that we need to look at to try to improve. Like, for example, right now we have an issue with work-life balance, right? So one of the things I'm talking to the union about is shift swapping. So if we're so short-staffed that I can't allow days off, like this weekend, I canceled all leave, right? So the folks that wanted to take the weekend off for Memorial Day, unfortunately, I had to be the Grim Reaper, and I had to cancel all leave. But if somebody's got a wedding in the evening, but they're working evening shift, why can't we just let them swap with somebody that's working days? They can come in and work day shift, and they can be at their wedding. They don't have to burn a day. But again, those are contractual issues that we're in negotiations. I will say I have a generally very understanding union president, and he understands the problems that are facing us right now, and he's been working with us well. I have not been able to say that every year, but Tony Rinaldi, the union president, I give him credit. So we'll look into those things. I'd be interested to hear more about that and what the value of that would be as we go into contract negotiations.
Good. Well, whatever your allegiances are, I wish you luck. It sounds like you're doing a good job.
This is helpful. I noticed that the mayor has joined us. Mayor, do you have any comments as concerning this contract or other input that you'd like to provide?
Thank you, Kim. I'm happy to, but I apologize for being late, and so I don't want to rehash things that have been covered. If there are concerns or questions, I'd be happy to address them. But otherwise, I think I'm sure that Jen and the chief represented our position well.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for the mayor while we have? I'm comfortable with this contract. I understand the problems, and I appreciate the time that the chief has came forward and really educate us on the issues that you have at hand. And I know that you have a hard job there and would not want to be sitting in your chair. So appreciate, one, your service and the work that's going on in Hartford. And I know that that's not easy.
Thank you. But I get that a lot lately. I'm not sure why. I say that to the mayor all the time. I wouldn't want to be in your chair, but I think he feels the same about me sometimes.
It depends on the heat of the chair and how hot it is.
Mine's on fire.
I know. Members, can I get a motion on this contract?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Bob. How about a second? Oh, I lost Mr. Waxenberg. How about Mr. Felsigno? I need a second, please. Julian, can you text Stephen, please? We lost 2 of our voting members. We have only a 4 quorum today. Here we go. Mark, could you please get off mute? I am looking for a second. We have a motion on the table. Bob White has already moved that, and I'm looking for a second, please, Mark.
You found it.
Thank you so much. Any other discussion? I don't hear any. We can take a roll call vote. We may have to follow up. We were aware that Stephen could be pulled today, but I can get his vote immediately following. Can we get a roll call vote?
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Kennison,
Yes. Try Steve.
Mr. Felsigno. So we'll get his vote for the record
We will.
when he returns, but we have three yeses.
And which is enough to move on this.
Correct.
But we do know he's present. He's probably listening on two lines at the same time. All right. Oh, somebody's okay. I wanted to make sure that he didn't get disconnected because that's happened before as well. We're going to get this motion solidified as soon as we can get Stephen Falsigno's for the record, but I'm going to consider this part of the discussion completed, and we will move to the next item on the agenda. I want to thank the chief for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is review and discussion and
Sorry, I just
possible
got off the phone. I heard you were calling me. I apologize.
Thank you. No problem. Can I get, we have a motion, we have a second on the police contract, and all three votes of yes.
So you have 4.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Steve. I know you're double dutying.
Sorry about that.
Nope, you're fine. Well, at least we've got it done. So the contract has been approved. Again, the next item on the agenda is the discussion, review, discussion, and possible action of the 5-year plan. And we have received a preliminary review of the 5-year plan at the subcommittee on April the 22nd. At that time, it was I'll call it a draft. And at that meeting, it was in conjunction with the fiscal year 22 budget. And excuse me, the secretary at the time was on that call, and she had left with some documents that they had asked to be provided. Those were provided to us, and we did include them at the full MARB meeting. However, we weren't taking this item up at the meeting. It was really for just disclosure in there. So at the subcommittee, we noted that the projected budget had some gaps in the out years, and the plan requested that the city provide a mitigation to close those gaps and some efficiencies. The city has provided some detail on the steps that they would take to eliminate the projected budget gaps, and that ranges from 11.75 million to 31.8 million. The subcommittee also requested a breakdown of projected reevaluation impact on property by type, and an exhibit is provided by the city illustrating that the projected pre and post evaluations for different properties classes is included. The city also was asked to provide us with a cash flow for your construction in progress, which has been included in our materials today. And there was also some discussion about a plan to increase your reserves. And the city today, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide us with some update on your 5-year plan and your related mitigation measures.
Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Kennison. I believe we spoke about many of these items at the last meeting, but just as a refresher, the notes I took that I wanted to point out today in our meeting were that, our original 5-year plan that we presented included property tax or grand list growth of 2.34% in fiscal year 2022, 1% growth in 23, and 1.5% increase in 24 to 26. We're in the midst of a reevaluation right now. We provided you with information on, some conservative, we think, increases that we see coming. They look very favorable at this time, but John Phillip is with us if there's additional questions on the that we used for that. So those increases are baked into our plan that we provided on the line called projected increases in grand list growth. So we are projecting a 5.13% increase in our updated projections. Our tax collection rate also was kept at 95.64%, but through May 21st, so earlier this week, we've actually collected 100.5% of our property taxes. So I feel that the collection rate is also going to increase as we go forward, and that is not actually baked into to our plan. So that actually equates to $1.5 million. So collection rates appear to be increasing. The grand list growth appears to be increasing. And then we had a pretty detailed plan as far as other cost savings items that we're working on. We're working on collection efforts outside of property taxes, which we believe will bring in additional funds related to private duty and other collections throughout the city that our team is working on with a collection agency shortly. Our golf operations continue to improve, so we think we'll not require a $240,000 transfer to the golf operations going forward, which is very positive. Our procurement team is working very hard on various contracts to renegotiate contracts, to do cost savings measures. We have a project manager that we're putting into our procurement team that will help make improved decisions throughout, find different ways to renegotiate contracts, find different ways to do process improvement that we think will save funds as well. And there's also significant grant opportunities that we foresee going forward that are not included in our actual budget, but we forecast that we will see significant grants available to us as well. So I believe that those are our high-level items that I wanted to point out, but I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
I have one question for the mayor. Under your other financing resources, we had some discussion about the outstanding receivables of the Excel Center and that impact that it had on the city. Has there been any resolution of addressing that? I wasn't sure if in the budget is what you were looking for, but I wasn't sure if you had any update on that.
We don't have any assumptions for that in our budget. And perhaps Julian has more insight than we do to whether there is any plan for including that in any payments from the state.
Okay.
Those payments would be, I think, were they to come, they would come as part of a broader, reimbursement of CRDA of its. The CRDA has drawn down reserves in order to pay operational costs in a number of areas. And I believe that there's been a discussion of some reimbursement of that to replenish those reserves. And my hope would be that as part of that, we might have our overtime bills paid, but we do not know.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you got an update. Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the members?
Yeah, maybe I missed this along the way, which is entirely possible, but I'm looking at the last piece of your, because there's no page numbers, general fund expenditure and revenue forecast assumptions, fiscal years 2022 through 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And it says 5-year outlook with a number 1 under it, and then it says revenues, expenditures, surplus, efficiencies, and other mitigation. And it's noted that if the pilot were to come in at 11, then you wouldn't need to do any mitigation for 23. But as I looked at the numbers, your revenues are increasing 22 to 23 by about, a little less than 2%. And then they go down 23 to 24, which I may have missed why. And then in 24 to 25, they go up by about, again, 10, about 10 million, and then 5 million, which is, 1%, close to 2. But your expenditures from 22 to 23 forecast go up 15 million. So they clearly outpace, but that's covered by mitigation and or additional money from the state. The problem is you have now a higher base in 23 and you're going up roughly 2% into 24. So you create a $21 million minus the 11 is roughly 10 that you would have to either mitigate or find efficiencies for. And 25, let's assume you did the 10 and maintained it for 25, you'd have to find an additional 3. And assume you did that, you'd have to find an additional 7 for 26. I guess that's a troublesome, you're mitigating or finding efficiencies every year. Even with the 11 million, the first year you're balancing it off by hopefully the 11 million pilot money. Then after that, assuming the 11 million pilot stays stable, because of the variations in the revenues and expenditures being so large from 23 to 24, you're creating a mitigation or efficiency hole that's being carried through for the next 4 years. I just don't know how you can constantly mitigate without additional revenue. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how you constantly mitigate without damaging the.
Yeah. So let me try to answer, and then Jen, correct anything that I screw up. So the drop in revenue after fiscal year 23 is primarily the result of the end of the 5-year corporate contribution of $10 million per year. So that's what accounts for that significant drop in revenue. The gap following that, I don't have these sheets in front of me. I apologize, but it is relatively stable for a number of years. And the assumption about the increased revenue thereafter is largely because of grand list growth assumptions, which we believe are sound, of about 1.5% per year. That's obviously a projection that, while it's our best estimate, time will tell. All that said, we agree with you that many of the mitigation measures that we're proposing are not measures we would like to take. And one of our hopes is that the pilot bill that was passed this year is in fact funded, not just at the $11 million that was included in the governor's budget for for one fiscal year, and not just sustaining that, but at the level of funding that the pilot legislation actually contemplated, which would be about double that.
Okay.
Jen, all fair?
Yep, I agree with everything you said.
Okay, so we're walking on eggs a little bit. Understanding the legislative process, I'm pretty, without being there anymore, but all signs point positively towards the continuation, which would be a good thing.
I hope that's right, but not going to make any predictions until
I don't disagree with you.
And that's why you were conservative in only putting in half of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Although, again, I mean, even that assumption is more generous to us than the governor's budget was.
Correct. Yeah, and that, okay. With the reduction of the 10 million by the corporate, assume that they do reduce the 10 million.
I think that is a very, very safe assumption. I think it's nearly, I don't think there's much chance at all that it will continue beyond the 5 years.
Okay, so that's a negative factor that's got to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form, and then of course, even if it's minor mitigation efforts, I just am concerned about the amount of mitigation you've done up to this point in order to get to where you are. Look, we just had the police presentation, which is creating an issue for the city as far as public safety. You can't mitigate in that area. Your fire areas, which, I mean, those are the two big departments. DPW, you know, we need, or you need. I just get concerned about the even a minor mitigation necessity that could adversely affect the well-being and safety of the citizens of Hartford. But until this budget is finalized, I guess we won't have any firm numbers to, or you won't have any firm numbers to look at for the out years. I'm just
Correct.
concerned.
I think that's right.
And we will have that answer for the full MARB on June the 10th, because session closes on the 9th.
And hopefully they won't go special, but it doesn't look like they will anyway, which is a good thing.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I do think at the subcommittee level, as we go forward, as we had in the past with the efficiencies, I know that they were included here. We can have a deeper conversation, knowing that you don't want to go there, and hopefully, if things should change, and this is your mitigation plan, that we would then continue to work on those areas if things did not come through as planned.
Correct.
At the subcommittee level, as we did in the past.
Agreed.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Julian, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
This is Bob White. I guess the, on the mitigation in the out years,
Yep.
From deferral of capital projects, we may have talked about this before, but I think when we go to the full MARB, we ought to have this at our fingertips. What are the areas of capital improvements that would not be undertaken if a serious mitigation effort was necessary?
Okay, I found this on the web for his mitigation effort. Check it out.
Oh, never mind.
I'm interested in the answer to that.
I think Sari is going to take care of you, Bob, in that category.
Right, I think so. And she comes cheap. Where did
I think I don't know what Siri would have to say, but I think our answer would be that we don't know yet. And probably what it would be is not taking any category of capital improvement off the table in whole, but scaling down, in part, or extending the timeline of certain projects and pushing capital expenses from one year to the next. I don't think it would be, saying that we're not going to pursue repaving, or we're not going to pursue, municipal building work. I think it would be extending the cash flow timeline and scaling back wherever possible.
Okay.
Well, now that you have Rosa,
Now
that you have Rosa as the appropriations chair, maybe in the bill that they're negotiating in Washington, there'll be a little line in there to deal with some capital projects for Hartford. Or John will get his pipe dream, maybe.
From your lips to the chair's ears.
I do have one other question based on the CIP list that you have, and I know it is a plan to go out for 2026. Do you feel, what state are you in as far as capital improvement and that needs attention? And is it still an ongoing issue because you're as a pay as you go, or do you think that are you in an emergency state of items that have not been addressed, and that one leaky roof would be a problem, or are you in a state where you're moving into maintenance and ongoing paying attention to items of I'm looking for the word, depreciation? So I guess my quick question is if this list that you have, I know it would be a list of items that you have slotted as the highest priorities over the next 5 years. Is there another big list that is waiting that can't get on this plan because of financial?
Yes, but it is at a scale that is so much larger that it is not something we can absorb locally alone. So the biggest item I would put on there are the levy system.
Okay.
We're chipping away at some of those flood control expenses. For example, our American Rescue Plan spending plan dedicates about $9 million to improvements at our pump houses. We estimate the total cost, of native improvements there to be about 40 million. But if you talk about the flood control system as a whole and the levy system, you're talking about, well over 100 million, probably somewhere between 100 and 200 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Which now back to whether it was Mark or Bob, I forget. I apologize, but back to the point about thanks, Bob. Back to Bob's point about federal infrastructure spending, and we're hopeful that might be an opportunity. That's certainly something that's been on Congressman Larson's radar. He has included that levee wall and flood control system reconstruction as part of the highway realignment proposal that he's been pushing for. So whether it's as part of that or whether it's independent of that, we'd hope we're certainly going to fight for federal resources to tackle that. But that's the biggest thing that stands out. I don't want to say that there's not other work. I mean, we could do triple the road work that we do on an annual basis and still not, be doing everything we'd want to do. But in terms of things that present a real risk to the city, I would put the flood control system near the top, and we're using those federal resources to tackle what we regard as one of the more urgent pieces of that, which are our pump stations.
Thank you, Mayor. That's important for us to know.
Wow.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I don't know if Mr. Falsigno is with us. I hope he is.
I think Mark stepped away as well.
Oh, I see that too.
Here I am. I was
Thank
listening.
you. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I apologize for today, but I did not want you to have a quorum, and I know there's important things going on.
I think the mayor appreciates that.
Indeed.
I'm ready to put a. I'm ready to
Mayor,
put a motion.
remember that I
Go
make
ahead.
sure. Mayor, make sure that you remember that I went way out of my way to make sure I was here today, especially since your wife is a law professor at UConn. That's a joke.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know.
I've got a class watching that, so and cheering.
Well, she has a great reputation for the with the real estate.
Yeah,
I mentioned that before.
So members, are we prepared to put a motion forward for approval of this 5-year plan to go to the MARB for recommendation from the subcommittee?
So moved.
Thank you, Bob.
Seconded.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other discussion? Julian, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Falsigno,
Yay.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Kennison.
Yes.
That's everybody.
All right. Your 5-year plan has been approved.
I just a follow up. I given the amount of the deficit and the good faith efforts on mitigation, I really think we ought to keep on the radar other forms of state funding, and we've talked about a bully pulpit here. But this is, it just drives home the unfairness of the system to urban areas. And it's, with all the effort and all the talent from the city side that's gone into this, to see something like that is pretty frightening. And, to hear the unfunded, pretty basic infrastructure needs. I'd like to, I don't know how to do this, but if we make it periodic and if there's other ways that we can be a bully pulpit, but this is a structural problem and it's starting to come home to roost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any doubt. Based on the mitigation, as I was saying before, that a continued mitigation, as minor as it may be, you're pretty well down to the marrow now. And
Right.
I certainly look. That I would be the last one to disagree with the case that we need structural changes in the way that our urban centers are funded. But I would also just say that I think we are in a fundamentally different and substantially more healthy position than we were 3 years ago when we began this process, right? I mean, we had made reductions in departments and in service that, as I said a few years ago, we're not just cutting into, fat, but cutting into muscle and bone. We have restored some of those.
I have to go get some.
Yeah. We have where we felt like we could responsibly do it. We've made investments in staff that we think, are important to either growing the grand list or delivering critical services. So we are, I think, in a fundamentally stronger position than we were a few years ago, with projections that are less scary than they were a few years ago. That said, I don't disagree with your fundamental, point, which I've made many times as well, that there are still some structural, some really big structural issues with the way that we fund municipalities, and urban centers in particular.
Yes,
I just think that now is the time to bring it on. I mean, there's some momentum, and without in any way distracting from the amazing ground you've covered and the competence of your administration, just to see these kinds of things still there, I think just says that we need to pay attention into whatever we can do. I know that a lot of it's beyond our pay grade, but we just have to be a voice for this, because it's just not right.
Yeah.
But I'd like to echo what you're saying, but I also have to say that I think the way the mayor and his staff has really been very pointed in what they've done has mitigated a situation that could be considerably worse.
Right.
So my compliments.
Oh yeah.
Staff.
Definitely. Still aiding on the side of caution, which is good. And you continue to come out with, good operating years and adding back to the fund balance, which is good.
Yeah.
So, we are seeing that it shows a deficit, but I think that you're going to outperform as you always have. And
well, that's our goal.
exactly. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is other related business. I do not have any other related business. Does anybody have anything that they would like to bring up? Mayor, do you have anything that you'd like to bring to the attention of the MARB?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you.
Okay. Then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Stephen. How about a second?
second, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure we're all in favor. Aye.
Yeah.
Aye. All right. Thank you
for
all.
everybody's patience.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah.
Yes, enjoy your nice holiday weekend.
Keep it safe. See ya.
Bye-bye.